is just going to introduce somebody that needs no introduction, Laith Ismail.
Well, people who haven't heard this piece is called Yanada, written by Australian composer Opus, and it's mean moon in Aboriginal language.
Good afternoon and welcome to this celebration of the life of Meriel Owen Sparks. She was known to us as Mother, Granny, Sister, Auntie Miracle, the Reverend Mother, the Unstoppable Force, the Bouncy Ball, and Meriel. We're here today because we have one important thing in common. We are privileged to have known Meriel and loved her, a woman who was a huge influence on us in many ways. Meriel enjoyed her life. She loved music, teaching, examining, adjudicating, travelling, good friends, food, and champagne. She was very health conscious and a member of Curves for quite a few years. I was given very strict instructions about today. 6 years ago, when Meriel tried to do a perish on us, and as usual bounced back, hence the bouncy ball name, I informed her how pleased I was that she hadn't died. I then explained that I didn't have the music she wanted played at her funeral and knew full well that she would come back and haunt me if I got it wrong. I was informed of the music required and recently the performers. She also added that less talk and more music make for a much happier occasion. So that's what we will do. Samantha, Batholomeusz and David Shaw would now like to play for us.
When my mother taught me to sing, sometimes a tear would glisten in her eye. And just like a river, it caused my heart to quiver. Now when I teach little children, pass on my mother's choices, the tears flow in the memory of the songs my mother taught me.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Timothy Sparks. Most of you probably know me. I'm Meriel's surviving son. Now, this is just an observation over a lifetime, so it may be full of inaccuracies and stuff left out, so bear that in mind, please. Meriel Owen was born in Toronto, New South Wales, the second eldest of a family of 7 kids. Her father Les was an accountant, mother Edwa a school teacher and an artist. My first memories were at Beacon Hill in a tarred cul-de-sac which could only be accessed by a gravel road. A new estate full of kids and buildings going up, as well as earth-moving machines to keep us entertained. Elder brother Louis was born in 55, myself in 57, and Andrew in 59. Mother caught hepatitis in early 63, so Louis and myself were bundled off to grandmother Sheegan's place in Mossman and sent to Mossman Public School. Eventually we moved back with Mum and Dad, and we got a telephone. XF5325 was the number. Black Bakelite STC 401. Yeah. At some stage after Mum got her Elmus in 1951, she was then entitled to teach, as far as I know. And she began teaching us students at home in Beacon Hill after we boys were out of nappies. So it deprived us of some privacy, but enabled us to meet a lot of interesting people and also hear endless versions of Chopsticks and Heart and Soul, Amanda, when Mum wasn't in the studio area. So Dad was a sales rep and as such had a reliable company car, which was quite necessary because the family car was off the road, engine on the bench in the kitchen, you know, that sort of thing. More than it was on, anyway. And there were always visits to Sheegan's in Mossman and the Sherborns in Linfield, and that was Dad's sister's tribe. Andrew, the youngest, developed asthma at an early age, which caused a lot of extra work for Mum. And we eventually got extensions to the house in 1967, and that opened up a whole new piano area and a bit of space for us growing boys. Anyway, but it became quite evident that Mother and Father never got along. So us kids were used to battles of various kinds. Highlights of the year were always stays at Picton, down southwest of Sydney, and further south in Canberra, where we all got up to all sorts of mischief. I'll now jump through the catastrophic teenage years, which seemed to prove that the violin was a poor choice of instrument for both Louis and Andrew. Actually, any musical instrument would have been a poor choice. But during these years, we managed to clutter up the cul-de-sac with cars, some dead, some running, and filled every cavity of the house with motorbikes and car parts. And I was amazed at how Mother kept calm and was able to continue tutoring students through all of this calamity. Jump forward a little, and both Louis and Andrew had left home. Mum had several overseas trips under her belt by this time, and seeking further study with the delightful Lydia Baldecchi-Arcuri in Genoa, in Italy. Mum stayed with Lydia's friend Rosa and learned to speak Italian, but was unaware that Rosa had a speech impediment. And so Mum learnt, she spoke Italian with a speech impediment, but the locals were too polite to correct her pronunciation. Eventually Father had his first and last heart attack, and a colossal weight was lifted from Mum's shoulders, and it was full steam ahead in the music industry. In 1990, Denise and I shifted out here to the west and had 2 children, with Eileen, the firstborn, you'll hear her later, always a bundle of tears upon leaving Granny's place in Beacon Hill. Mother coughed out for music lessons for Eileen, which proved a fantastic success here in Orange. A favourite stay for Mum was in Kemsing in Kent, where my cousin Jane's daughter bestowed the title Auntie Miracle upon Mother. And it's just a slip of the tongue, but it stuck. Many return trips to Genoa and Kemsing ensued, as well as cruises to places like Iceland and the Falkland Islands, and most destinations in between. These trips were not without incident, e.g. Singapore provided a heart attack. Another calamity was taking an expired passport to the airport, delaying her departure by several days. 1996 saw the first bypass surgery and a pacemaker, followed by a defib unit, the first of several. In about 2003, she moved to Orange and rented for a year. She eventually sold Beacon Hill and decided on number 2 Maple Avenue, where she remained until her final days. The benefits of this move were a much briefer ambulance ride to the nearest hospital And that has been proven many times. As a matter of, well, you know, the shares in the Teachers' Health Fund have gone well up since she moved on. But some years ago, she planned her own exit by decanting herself off the side of a cruise ship way down by Champagne into the icy waters, and that would assist her in slipping beneath the waves. This of course, never happened, but she used to tell funeral salespeople this, with much amusement. Anyway, Mother arrived in Orange, and the then director of the conservatorium had no idea who Mother was, and anyway, eventually Mum's reputation became apparent and she gained the respect that she deserved. She had a studio at the previous Con location and Studio 5 within this walls. So I think Eileen's going to entertain us now, is she? Yes. Thank you.
invite David Owen, Meriel's brother, to say a few words.
What talent. Can I take a minute? There's some credits to go first. Denise, we have to thank you very much on behalf of the Owen clan for what you've done for Meriel, particularly in the last couple of years, and also with doing this marvellous presentation now. You deserve more, and you should retire. Where are we? Sorry, I've just got to compose myself a little. Also, the talent that's appearing today, I mean, it's just mind-boggling, and you ain't seen nothing yet. I suppose I'm the grand old man of the Owen clan at the moment. I'm the last of the boys, and second last in the whole family of seven, sorry. The genealogy suggested that if you were a male in the an Owen male, you'd be an accountant, and a female, you were a teacher. Since Dad was an accountant and Mum was a teacher, I thought that the source of that information was pretty short. The family was made up of 2 girls and 5 boys. Just to place it in the situation, I'm the second last boy and the second last survivor. So I'm the old fella of the tribe. I was also an accountant. So Meriel was certainly the teacher in the second half of her life. First, she was teaching 3 quite wild boys, controlling them and building a house and a home for them. Then she started teaching and created quite a career for herself in Beacon Hill. But Meriel had done very well earlier on. Mother whilst she was a teacher, she was the main pusher in terms of the development of musical talent in our family. Mum was the pusher. She sat beside the piano and pushed the case, mainly for Meriel, and Meriel responded dramatically. She then went to the Sydney. Sorry, Meriel, I was very relaxed when Meriel went because I knew that she was ready to go. I can't handle it now. She went to the the Conservatorium of Music. She studied under Zensky and Eugene Goossens. They're the incredible talent going back in the 50s. Meriel responded again, and I believe that she just missed out being beaten by Eileen Joyce to a career on the stage. She certainly was a wonder, and as a teacher, her greatest wish was to develop talent and music. She certainly did that when she came to Orange, and Orange Conservatorium provided the vehicle for her, and I think together they developed dramatically. I think I'm just about done. Thank you very much for all the talents that's appearing today, including those ones that haven't appeared yet. Meriel would be really pleased with what's happened and what's happening today. and the response from the audience. Thank you very much for coming, and I'm pleased that she had such support. Thank you very much.
Amanda Handel.
I'd like to play something that Meriel gave me back in 1976 for my HSC. And this piece has been so significant to me personally, as well as my music. It's La Puerta del Vino, so it's very Spanish, as you can hear, although written by Debussy, the French composer. So I'd like to just have you imagine the place. La Puerta del Vino, it means the gate of wine, and it is actually a place in Granada, south of Spain, and the Alhambra Palace, which is a whole sort of compound that was built in about the 11th century, and it was built in that beautiful architecture, Islamic architecture. This is when Spain was under Islamic rule. And so it stands right up in a mountain range on the top of a hill, and there's like the old walled city, and it's heavily fortressed. So if you imagine going up into the mountains, and there's this old castle, and the walls are so heavily fortified. They have these old gates where you've sort of got to go in and around in order to get into the compound. So the gate of wine is actually the gate under the most heavy towers and fortresses. And once it's opening out, you come to a beautiful courtyard, and there's gardens and fountains and pools, and it's just so beautiful. So the Gate of Wine, you might imagine, was named after Islamic rule, and so it would be the place. It's a lovely sunny courtyard. It would be the place where perhaps a lot of celebration, dancing and singing took place. And so the piece is written on a habanero rhythm, so it's sort of like a dance, and it has a very melancholy type of melody, which is the Spanish have a propensity to be quite melancholic, and then on the other hand, very festive, a lot of drinking and dancing. So this piece illuminates that, and it's a magical place, and I've been there 4 times, and I would never have gone, I don't think, unless Meriel had given me this piece. It's just wonderful. Written in 1915. There's quite a long story, really interesting, about how the piece came about, because Debussy is not Spanish. But that's another story, and I'll play it for you now. Please enjoy. Thank you very much. So I'd like to offer now some memories and reflections on just a small part of Meriel's life that I experienced as her student as a teenager. So I'm just going to pop David's notes there. Here we go. So Meriel, as we all know, was a lovely, infinitely patient teacher, ever calm and collected. She never expressed disapproval or disappointment in badly prepared, messy playing, which she encountered a lot from me. She never imposed her ideas or pushed her own interpretations on to me. Nothing ever seemed to disturb her equanimity and poise. Back when I started learning at her home studio in Beacon Hill, Mrs. Sparks, as I knew her, would have been in her early 40s, and I was in my high school years. She had 3 very cool teenage sons who hovered around the lessons. Her 3 sons are, I believe, her everlasting, most dearest people on the planet. And then I know so many here are relatives as well. But I guess I really only know the 3 sons. So I found the boys very well-spoken, cultured and respectful. They were sort of hooligans of the best kind. Lewis, the eldest, was quiet and sophisticated. He seemed to have his act together. Timothy was very curious, with a very bizarre sense of humour, and enjoyed playing pranks. Andrew, the youngest, was my age. He was persistent, really persistent person, very cheeky, fun and mischievous. He used to pop his head in through the studio window and make totally clueless comments about my hair or my clothing, and it was so embarrassing. Anyway, his mother would gently say, Andrew, go and peel the potatoes. It happened quite a lot. Anyway, there were rumours going around that the Sparks boys were amazing musicians, really talented. I didn't see or hear anything to confirm that rumour on site around their home. Instead, there was overwhelming evidence of a different sort of passion they all shared. That little cul-de-sac, Tulgara Place, was, Tim's already told my story. It was crammed with Pontiacs and Dodgers. And there were so many of these gangster cars and other sorts of vehicles that my mother had trouble turning the car around when she dropped us girls off for lessons. One evening when I was about 16, Tim gave me a lift home in one of his American beauties. He didn't say much on the way, but the ride was fun, sliding around on the great big bench seat, no seat belts of course, and a bunch of groovy plastic grapes swayed from the rearview mirror. I'm so glad Tim didn't take me in his geeky grey old van. It had suspicious pink furry stuff sort of glued all over it. That would have been really weird. Anyway, aside from these extra musical distractions, Mrs. Sparks would invite me to play her grand when I'd got a piece up to a reasonable sort of standard. So we'd walk into the main part of the house, go through the dining room, where there'd be often automobile parts all sitting up on the dining room table, and maybe there'd be a stray fender over there waiting for something on the floor. You'd have to step around before making your way up the steps, up to the grand piano. So this room had a huge window with views sweeping over Brookvale and out to the sea. And if you actually looked downstairs, there'd be Tim modifying a motorbike down on the grass below. Meriel, always in command, floated through the obstacle course in her house as if she hadn't even noticed. For me, this was a really cool, eccentric learning environment. I loved it. But before meeting the Sparks family, my sister and I had been taught by a terrifying, mean old lady who conveniently lived just around the corner. And she kept her hand poised, ready to strike. We'd been begging our mother to change teachers because we hated piano. We wanted to go to Mrs. Sparks because we'd heard reports of her fantastic teaching. Fortunately, our mother finally relented and booked us in. So suddenly, under Mrs. Sparks, a whole new world of piano playing opened up. Music came alive, it was exciting and interesting, and Mrs. Sparks was really nice. So music seemed like magic to me because you didn't play by pushing down boring old notes and having to use the stupid right fingers. You were free to play with feeling and imagination. I don't know how she did it, but under her lead, I did begin to play as if by magic. Through my teen years, she never harped on about practicing. That domain was entirely up to me. And for the most part, it worked because she knew how to introduce really interesting music. After finishing school, I went off and got married and had a baby. And when I returned for lessons a few years later, Meriel had completed a pedagogical residency in Italy with Professor Lydia Baldecchio-Curi. So she took me on again now with my baby on board, and although it was a bit difficult, she genuinely loved him being there. She had a lot of affection for my little baby. Then after a couple of years, Meriel graciously suggested and sent me off and organised for me to learn with the formidable Miss Nancy Salas, for which I'm really grateful. However, after that, we just gradually lost contact. Meriel had supported me and encouraged me as a young teacher and got me along to all the Music Teachers Association seminars. And I found her insight into problem solving and her precision in teaching at a higher level was brilliant and really illuminating. It's influenced me a lot. And a lot has happened since then. We both moved away from Sydney, and I do regret now that I've only had sporadic contact with Meriel, meeting her by chance at Music Teachers Association seminars. And right now, I'm a lot older than Meriel was back then in the 1970s and early 80s. And I realised there was something really deep and unique about her character, beyond her teaching persona. She never intruded or sought to directly influence others. She had a certain dignity and self-mastery with an ability to hold her peace and just let people be. Since those formative years with Meriel, I've strayed off the path of the classical, the straight and narrow path. And over the decades, I've come to develop a diverse involvement in other sorts of music, and especially venturing into Spanish and Latin music cultures. People are often surprised by my eclectic departures and curious about my background influences. And when I trace my pathway back, I find it was that Debussy, that prelude that Meriel gave me, that's the culprit and the keystone, which inspired me to explore parallel universes in music. I was very lucky to learn piano and other things about life with Meriel. May she rest in peace now, and her legacy lives on. And thank you for allowing me to join you in giving this tribute to Meriel. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Meriel loved all her family, keeping in contact with her sister, brothers, and their children. She was delighted when they came to visit. There was always music, champagne, and lots of laughter. I'd like to now invite to the stage two of Julian, Meriel's brother's daughters, who also pursued music as a career. Little Meriel and Jennifer will play for us Much Ado About Nothing.
I know that Auntie Meriel said fewer words and more music, but when have we ever really listened? So thank you all for being here. It's so great to see so many wonderful people. There are no words to adequately sum up Meriel. The most generous, gracious, elegant, beautiful woman I've ever known. Our father Julian adored her, possibly almost as much as he adored his wife Helen. Our mother Helen is very sorry she couldn't join us today, but she's not quite up to travelling. She lives in Tasmania, as do we now. But we grew up in Canberra. So Julian settled with his wife in Canberra and produced 4 girls. And we grew up in a sort of a hothouse. We kept to ourselves in Canberra. We were very aware of the hub of Owen life, which seemed to be in Sydney, and this was where all the action happened. And we kept an eye on things, but we didn't really travel up to Sydney very often. So it was people like Auntie Meriel who came regularly to see us and also to catch up with her other Canberra friends. As an examiner, she was in Canberra every year to do an examining season, usually in the middle of July. So she came down in a fur coat, which I always remember the beautiful fur coat. It's probably completely not politically correct these days, but we absolutely adored her. Her mother, Julian and David and Meriel's mother, sent down the family piano when we were little, and my parents said, well, of course, they'll have some piano lessons. And I think it's been to their everlasting surprise that we sort of stuck with it. So we're sort of stuck as professional musicians now, and incredibly grateful that Meriel carved the way for us. I think that she worked terribly hard as a pianist. She was a very talented musician. She became an exceedingly great teacher, and that is a rarity. I can only tell you, there are many music teachers, as you know. There are very, very few great teachers who bring alive this extraordinary, wonderful gift. I think it's no exaggeration to say that Meriel Owen is an Australian national treasure as far as music is concerned. She has influenced hundreds and hundreds of people, many of whom became professional musicians, many of whom just became music lovers who are supporting our musical industry. When she grew up in Sydney and when she was active studying and then teaching post-World War II, this was at a time when the Australian music scene was really being created. It was incredibly exciting. We had the traditions of Europe to look up to and that we were quite in awe of, but there was also a larrikin element in Australia where people were able to take this incredible tradition and create it, make it our own musical language. And so the wonderful stuff that is happening now with all of these great institutions, Australian Chamber Orchestra, all of the network orchestras, the amazing AMEB, all the music teachers associations, the great conservatoriums, this is all because of people like Meriel Owen. So many people have said to me they were sorry to hear about her. Great names, everybody knew her and everybody loved her. One occasion I showed up to play for Tasmanian Symphony Orchestra as a casual musician. Richard Gill was conducting. I'd never met him. He came up, he always looks at the orchestra list, and he came up and said, I was a little confused for a second, but now I know. But he adored Meriel, and he was one of many. She was a really famous and important Australian musician, and we are very, very grateful for her gift. And I think we have a lot, her tiny feet, they're very, very great shoes that we need to be filling. So thank you all for your support and for your love of Meriel. It's greatly appreciated. And I'm deeply sorry, Tim and Denise and David and Eileen, we've really lost somebody incredibly special, and you have our love and our sympathy and our support always. The pieces that Jenny and I are going to play when we get our stuff together here, a couple of movements, very, very short, by Korngold from his suite Much Ado About Nothing. The garden scene reminded me of Meriel's great love of beautiful flowers and plants. She would look at a peony and say, "Isn't this exquisite?" And she took time to notice really beautiful stuff. And that was something that our generation, we kind of glossed over so many things. She took time. She found the best possible ingredients. She went to a lot of trouble to create absolutely the most perfect thing, whether it was cooking, whether it was music, whether it was plants. So the garden scene is for her garden. And then the hornpipe is just because she really knew how to have fun, and she taught us how to be happy. So thank you, Meriel.
How amazing was that? We would like to thank Doctors Claire Noonan and Louis Christie, all the palliative care nurses who are absolutely incredible, the wonderful Live Better people, Without the support we had from all these people, Meriel would not have been able to stay at home for the last 7 months. Also, a very big thank you to everyone that visited. You made the end of Meriel's life a joy. She truly appreciated the cakes, flowers, chocolates, lunches, dinners, champagne, love, and laughter. She enjoyed every minute and every cake. I swear to you, every person that went to visit took cake. Granny, for God's sake, tell them no cake, we've got a fridge full. We now farewell Meriel. We're extremely grateful that she lived her life among us and for all that her life has given to us. In our sorrow, we are comforted in knowing that Meriel is at peace. Remember, she lives on in her teaching and in our memories. The world has lost a lot of its bubble. The ORC Symphonic Choir will now perform for us.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're probably mostly aware Meriel sang with the choir for probably most of the last 10 years or so. So we thought it was appropriate to have her join us one more time. Mozart, Ave Verum, is a piece that's about being examined in death. We feel that Meriel was examined in life and passed with an A+.
We'd like to thank all the performers today, but especially the Conservatorium and the staff that have helped us to organise this. And we also want to thank you all for being here today. We appreciate your love, support, memories, and absolutely beautiful music. Please join us for refreshments in the link. Thank you.